Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, Paranormal Geeks. Good evening, good evening. This is March 12th, 2013. This is going to be a great show tonight. I am really just so excited. I've been not able to do much today. I've been messing around online doing, looking at some old pictures and putting them up on Facebook. Just very nervous about tonight's show. This is going to be a good show. I've already said that a couple times, so I'll quit saying that. Tonight, my co-host is going to be Miss Sharon Day, and Sharon is on the line. And how are you tonight, Sharon?
Oh, I'm doing wonderfully.
Good. You ready for tonight?
Oh, yeah. I'm always ready.
Sweet.
When it comes to paranormal subjects, I'm go, go, go.
All righty. This one's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this now for just about ever since that we got our guest scheduled, and it's going to it's just gonna rock. It's gonna rock.
Yes. I'm excited. For most people, I'm sure that are listening know who MK is, but I'll give you just a little bit of background. I want people to kind of know he's actually more than we think he is. He's sort of a superhero. MK Davis is he's best known as the first video expert to handle the actual original Patterson-Gimlin film and stabilize it, so that the public could see the best images possible. So when you're on, watching TV or online, and you see these videos of the Patty, as they like to call the Bigfoot, they're a much clearer and more stabilized version. And I'm so thankful that he did that, because it gives us the best chance to figure out if we think it's a hoax or not. But that's not all that MK does. I mean, he goes through a great deal of Bigfoot videos to give us the best, most clear version of them so that we can make decisions. But other than that, he also has some really interesting hobbies. He does astrophotography. That's photographing stars through a telescope, which has given him that really fine eye for detail. He's a videographer. He does a lot of nature videos, photography of nature, tornadoes, you name it, he does it. He's a field researcher. He doesn't just observe this stuff. He actually goes out in the field and does a great deal of field work. He's, as we know, a really good video expert. What I really enjoy about MK is he's not only just sort of an amicable, nice guy, he's also like the quintessential paranormal geek. I mean, this is a guy who could fuss and fret over film for hours trying to get just the right images so that everything is as good as he can give it to you, and then he puts it out there and he says, you figure out what you think of it. And those are the kind of attributes that I respect immensely. He's shown a great deal of restraint in some of these videos we're going to be discussing tonight are the ones he's probably most famous for at this time. He's been putting out a lot of Bigfoot videos from a research site, and these videos, some people might know them as the Peeper and Whitey and the Fence Climber,
Right.
you know.
Right.
We've come to know the characters here, you know. I mean, all of these you know, there's multiple videos of some of these Bigfoot coming and going, and this is a long-term study that had been going on, and he's been doing what he can to give us the best images from this study and let us decide what we think. I respect that. I also respect that when he puts them up online, he actually films his computer showing the images instead of just giving us the film, because he's trying to protect the rights of the people who took these videos,
Right.
so people can't just steal them and run away with them. So, you know,
they're not his. He didn't actually go out there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who there's no profit to be made. He's not out there trying to become a celebrity. He's literally a paranormal geek that sits at home and goes through this video, and then when he gets really frustrated and he's had enough and his eyes are strained, he goes out in the field looking for more mysteries. So he's my kind of guy. I'm glad to have him on.
He needs a paranormal geek T-shirt.
You know, he's earned that. He's earned the hat, the cup, you know, everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Seriously.
The underwear. Yeah. You know when you get the paranormal geek underwear.
Oh my, yeah. I'll try not to send him the G-string. I don't think he'd appreciate that.
No. And me, well, never mind.
He'd probably use it as a slingshot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, tonight before we start talking to MK, we were going to have somebody come on and talk a little bit to help us understand how MK got these videos, where the videos come from, why he's working on this. And I'm not sure, has Steve called in yet?
Yes, he is. He's on the line right now. Steve.
Perfect.
Yeah, hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine, Jim. Sharon?
Oh, good.
Great.
Hi, Steve.
How are you this evening?
Steve, it's nice
we're doing great.
to almost meet you.
Jim, I'm delighted to be here.
Great. I'm very glad you're here. Heard a lot about you.
Well, don't believe everything you hear, or maybe believe everything you hear.
All my commitment to the end of the show. We'll see.
Steve, what I'd like to get from you is just how MK came in to handle these videos. Why is he doing this? Where did the videos come from?
Well, Sharon, probably the best thing to do would be to start at the beginning.
Okay.
And before I do that, though, I would like to clarify a few things. There have been a lot of allegations made about these videos, that they were hoaxes and that this was all part of a long, drawn-out hoaxing affair. I don't think anything could be further from the truth, but that's my own independent evaluation. That being said, let me kind of lay the framework and how MK came to have these in his possession to evaluate, and what his subsequent involvement was. And I think people at that point should be able to understand, or should realize, that this man has made an immense contribution to the field with absolutely no gain and a great deal of time, effort, and expense out of his own pocket to try to do this and make these videos widely available for everyone to see, not just a few. That being said, let's start at the beginning. Late summer of 2011, I was contacted by Dr. Melba Ketchum, and she had asked me if I could help her find some video and audio and still imagery that she could submit along with her DNA study. And she had heard through the grapevine and through sources that I had worked with habituators around the country. And let me clarify something. I am not a researcher. My health precludes me going out in the field and doing research. And although I've been familiar with this subject for decades, Really, I'm limited to networking and facilitating and enabling people, and I specifically focus on people that I feel are involved in authentic and genuine habituation. That being said, I told Melba that I had some years ago viewed a compilation DVD that was compiled of about 75 different clips ranging from a few moments or a few seconds to a few moments, showing different alleged Sasquatch creatures, beings on this property. Originally, it was represented as being a property in Mississippi. Fraudulently, I might add. I subsequently found out that this was the cell site down in the Paris, Texas area. And we were able to run down Mrs. Sells and arrange a meeting between her and Dr. Ketchum and some other people to sit down and review some of these videos. And at the end of that meeting, she agreed to make these videos available to Melba if she wanted to use them. The format was a plastic tub full of VHS tapes. And, of course, everybody says, well, we want to see your videos. Well, there was 300 hours of videos. There was no rhyme or reason to them. I immediately realized that we needed somebody that knew what they were doing to become involved at that point. And we made arrangements. Sally Ramey, after the Honebi Bigfoot conference in 2011, after that conference, swung down through North Texas and rendezvoused with Melba and picked up the tapes and delivered them to MK in Jackson, Mississippi. And MK, this was back in late August, early September of 2011, and he spent the bulk of the fall of 2011, right up until the Christmas holiday, studiously going through these videos, trying to glean the most interesting and novel clips or snippets of video. And bear in mind, you might have to view 4 or 5 hours of video to get 10 seconds of something. If you look at Whitey's Run as an example, I believe it's about a minute and a half. MK, I don't know how many hours of video he viewed in order to encounter that, but it was several dozen hours at least. That would give you an idea. But anyway, the only thing that Mrs. Sells asked was that we copy these to DVD and return them to her. Several people had taken videos from Mrs. Sells and other people that had researched at that area, always with the promise that they would return them. But similar to loaning money, sometimes loaning things to people causes amnesia. And the tapes always seem to disappear and never return. What impressed Mrs. Sells is that every tape that was given to us, MK returned, and along with the DVD copies that he promised her, and he did it within the time span that he promised. That it demonstrated his credibility to her. He also subsequently met with her and some of the people that were involved in the research activities in a face-to-face meeting. They spent a couple of days there going to the various sites where these videos were taken so that he could perform measurements and reenactments and that sort of thing, and to try to lend further credibility and understanding to them so we could put them in their proper context. It became readily apparent to him and myself that allegations of hoaxing and whatnot were unfounded, or certainly appeared to be unfounded. And almost without exception, whenever we delved into the people that made the allegations, they turned out to have their own agenda or their own axe to grind, whatever. In the case of one individual who was a pro-kill, represented a pro-kill group within a southern research organization, he was refused access to the property. On that basis, he made a series of allegations about these videos being hoaxes. Simply, as I understand it, based upon the fact that he wasn't allowed to come in there and hunt on this property. Other people with other organizations viewed some of the tapes and made offhand observations that all that couldn't be real, and basically threw the baby out with the bathwater. No one, to my knowledge, has spent anywhere near the time and effort that MK has spent, with the possible exception of one or two of the researchers that had originally done this work. Had took the time to go through and studiously evaluate these videos. We are now working with those people to make those additional videos available as conditions and circumstances allow us. Go ahead, Sharon. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was glad to hear that. What I was curious about, and I think probably others are, is there's been, and you were talking about people who had ill will and spoke poorly of this research project, but a lot of people have been bringing in the name Mike Sells and saying a lot of things about him, and I think you probably have a better understanding of what Mike Sells was about. So if you could share that, I'd like to hear it.
Well, I never met Mike Sells, and I want people to understand that, but I share some things with him. Mike Sells has passed away. He was a cancer patient, passed away of cancer. And it became apparent to me in the last few years of his life that he was, despite his illness and whatnot, made a considerable effort to try to contribute to the area of research and the whole enigma of Sasquatchery. And he did, I think he made a huge contribution on several fronts. Not only did he acquire this property and make it available to people and try to facilitate their research, and a great deal of money and time and effort was expended trying to document the activity of this property that occurred on this property. But a great deal of forethought went into it. And for these people to make these offhand comments about, oh, that's just hoaxed video and it's been around and everybody's seen it and that sort of thing, there are numerous clips that have made their way around the internet, for sure. But to make offhand comments without knowing all the facts, I think are outlandish. One of the things that MK has brought to the table is a degree of study and specificity regarding these videos that I don't think anyone else has applied. And we've only really focused on the videos that show anomalies that we really can't account for. People talk about the Whitey video. Try to figure the distance that Whitey covers on broken terrain, quadrupedally and bipedally, down a creek bank, up a creek bank, and here again across broken and brushy terrain in a matter of 45 or 50 seconds. I don't think an Olympic sprinter could cover that distance on a flat track, let alone open, broken terrain.
Yeah.
I sure as hell wouldn't do it on a bicycle or a skateboard or any of the other absurd
I've heard some good ones out there.
You know, the statements that people have made up there. And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that Whitey is somebody in a white ghillie suit, it's just, you know, it's preposterous.
Well, you know, I think anybody that's been following these videos that MK has been releasing, whether they've been seeing them on his YouTube channel or they've been seeing them at some of the various Bigfoot sites, one thing that comes to mind, and I'm an incredibly, unbelievably skeptical person, even though I have seen a Bigfoot, I don't think everything I see is a Bigfoot.
Sure.
It takes a lot to impress me. And one thing that I think really drew me into these videos is the fact that we have these videos that show, if you were going to hoax, it would be so simple to have somebody walk by in a shadowy light and catch them going, left to right or right to left, the classic. These are not easy to find. I don't know how MK elucidated these from some of these videos. They're very subtle, and he had to do a great deal to stabilize it and make it clear to us. That's not a hoax. That's it's a really bad hoax if it is.
Sure. We should let MK go. We're kind of stealing his thunder. He can go into the different things that he's done to bring these details out.
Well, Steve, we really appreciate you, clarifying this for us, because I know a lot of people are wondering, what is MK's part in all of this? And really, he was brought into this research, and he continues it.
His part was to enhance these videos and try to pull out from the videos select clips that Melba could use as part of her DNA study. With all the allegations of hoaxing that had been made both before and after, Melba decided, and for whatever reason, not to use these videos, and of course they were returned to Mrs. Sells. However, we do have their permission to make them available. I say make them available under the conditions that MK is, putting them on YouTube and trying to protect protect her from any copyright infringement.
Well, and what all of this should do is provoke an intelligent conversation, and that's what he should be doing. And yet there seems to be a certain amount of stupidity in the Bigfoot field where it makes it really difficult to have intelligent talk. So, I invite anybody that's intrigued by this to, gather together and talk about these things intelligently instead of...
Something I would like to point out is that a lot of people are familiar with some of the videos that they've seen on YouTube and whatnot that MK's posted, but there are other videos that were taken not on the cell site, but in southeastern Oklahoma, as an example, from some of these other researchers that, as I understand it, are quite compelling, that MK's working on as we speak.
Yes.
So,
excellent.
The bottom line is the best is yet to come, and this is just scratching the surface. And we're going to go wherever the videos take us. If at some point...
Well, and MK's always been good about that. When people bring him videos, he'll do what he can for them. All he wants to do is get as much visual out there as possible so we can all get a discussion going and decide what we think.
If you step back and look at the big picture here, we have examples of white Sasquatch. We have examples of black, brutish type Sasquatch. The patty type creature is an example. We have the peeper or the hairy type that's slim build and kind of acrobatic.
The beatnik of the Bigfoot world.
Right. Then we've got the one that MK affectionately calls Tall Paul, which is when he really stretches out and reaches his full height. It's almost astounding how tall he is. I'm not going to make any conjecture about it because I don't have anything to scale him against. I know MK is working diligently trying to come up with a way to scale Tall Paul's estimated height.
That was very impressive.
I think by the time all of these, and bear in mind that we still have hundreds of hours of videos and clips to review and to analyze, and that's not just MK involved here. I would also point out that there's several other people that have helped in this regard, yourself included. Carl Sepp has worked.
Carl Sepp's been doing the audio cleanup.
That's right.
Wonderful job. Yeah.
He's done a very good job. Scott Nelson has looked at some of these. Sally Ramey was hugely important in making this happen. Sally's a person that did an enormous amount of work behind the scenes, helping Melba and helping get these videos out to where people could see them. And she's quite frankly somebody that deserves a lot of credit and hasn't gotten much respect or credit for the work that she does.
She is one of my top favorite females in the Bigfoot world. She has my total...
I don't know that I'd go that far. But,
I think her passion. She has a passion and she has ethics, and that's all it takes for me to be really impressed.
Sally's a sweetheart. I've known her for a long time, and we've worked on various ventures before, so I trust her. And I would say that it's been an honor to work with Sally. It's been an honor to work with MK. It's been an honor to work with you and Carl.
Oh, thanks.
And that's enough of sucking up to you all. It's really time to get on with the show and get MK in here.
Okay.
Hannah and I have had a very long day today. As you know, I've been traveling all day.
Yep.
And I'm recovering from.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me get off the air and let you all get on with it. And
Okay,
I will
Steve, thanks
listen
so much.
attentively. And if I think I need to call back in and clarify something, I will do so.
Do that.
All right. Good luck with your old show.
Much,
and
okay,
thank you, Jim.
All right. I'll talk
Good
to you
night.
later.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, I do have MK on. He's queued up and ready to go. MK, you still with us?
I am.
All right. Welcome to Paranormal Geeks tonight, sir.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show tonight. Steve gave us a nice overview of what you do, and I'm kind of wondering. I know some other people out here would like to know how you really got into the stabilization. I know you do some really great work with your camera. What got you started in all this?
Well, it's stabilization work started just more or less with a desire to improve this film, the Patterson film. It started around 1997. You know, with the advent of the internet, you begin to see things that you haven't seen before, and I saw a couple of really good, clear frames from the Patterson film. And you know, my experience tells me that you can't get this kind of clarity from a bad film. And the stuff that you saw on TV, you know, that they ran occasionally, was grainy and shaky, unstable. You couldn't get a clear look at it. Mm-hmm. And to see these really good frames, you know, it told me that somewhere out there was a better film, a better version of this film. And it just sent me on a journey to look to try to find, you know, better versions and better images. And it's one thing led to another, and stabilization is half the ball game. You know, we all see stabilized images. And when we see in real time, nothing's jumping or jerking around. You know, the eye and the brain work together to stabilize it. And when you looking right through the eye of that camera that the cameraman was holding, and he was doing all the motions that he was doing, it's hard to concentrate on more than one plane of motion at a time. You know, so if without any enhancement, just stabilization, you're gonna see a whole lot more. And then if you're able to get clarity through enhancement, and then there's an old saying in astronomy that if you can boost it 1%, you'll see 10 new things. And that's held true pretty much with the Patterson film. You know, to the extent that you can increase the sharpness, identifying what the problems are with the film, because you know every lens has inherent problems. You know, unless you get into the really high dollar lenses, like the fluorite lenses, you know, that have very little chromatic aberration. Chromatic aberration is common among the more inexpensive lenses, and what it is, it doesn't, all the colors, when you're trying to take color film, all the colors come to the same point of focus. And they try their best to correct it with, you know, multi-element lenses and things like that, but when it comes down to magnification, when you really want to see the Patterson subject blown up to where, you know, it's decent size, you also blow up and enlarge the flaws. And these flaws in these lenses, what you see, you begin to see color halos, and they all contribute to unsharpness in the total overall images. And what I did was to take it frame by frame and remove the offending colors, right. The ones that weren't clearly sharply focused, and then I just simply deleted them or removed them and reassembled the film frame by frame in a stabilized form in black and white at first, because it was I didn't want an off balance color because of the removal of one of the colors.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And that easier to keep track of.
Pardon?
Black and white would be easier to keep track of.
Yeah, at the time, I was better served with the black and white copy, but later on, I developed some techniques for retaining the color and still sharpening the film, and all of it's just tedious work, and it's not anything special or new knowledge. It's optical people know and have known for a long time how to do that. It's just tedious work, and you have to have the raw material to work with. Then you got to have the gumption, I guess, to sit down and do that.
I'm thinking that your seat at your desk must be well worn.
Well, yeah, I've probably spent too many hours there, late at night. But I kind of waited till everything is settled for the day, and if I got the time. And, of course, at the time I worked shift work, so I had to work it in, with work schedules and things like that. But when I first finished a run of the film, of the Patterson film, and I call it the second walk sequence because there are two different sequences in there, and there's a break between them. The second one that has the famous look back, and of course, I had already removed the chromatic aberration, and then I put it all back in stabilized form, and I hit the preview button. My jaw dropped at how good this film was. It was just, astounding. You could see things on it that just, it cried out authentic. It's the kind of thing that, we're all born to recognize, when we see our first human face. We see the smile, we see the skin stretch, we see the moisture in the eyes, we see muscles moving. We know what it is. It's your mother or your caretaker. It's when you're looking at something special, that is living. And so,
I'm sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
What I like about your YouTube videos, you come up, you get these conclusions, but then you show us how you come up with this. You show us how you, like you were just talking about, going in and you play with the contrast to bring out the background. I remember one of them, and it has to do with the look back picture, where you bring out more of a lighter gray scale, and you can actually see the eye, the right eye. And it's the video where you say, look back here at the tree. You can actually see the bark on the tree. I mean, you bring us this, but you show us how you got there. It's just not thrown in our face, say, here, this is it. I like how you explain.
I try to do that. I try to help people to understand, that this is not hocus pocus. These are tried and true methods for enhancement that have worked in other applications, down through the years very well. And some of these are related to the more modern digital age. Splitting colors is not new. It was always done with a prism or with filters. But splitting it digitally has a similar effect.
And MK, you were working with the Patterson film. You were actually working with film, not with video. And now what you're doing here, the film from Texas, the videos from Texas you're working on, come from video.
Right.
And sometimes night vision or sometimes a low-quality camera. Is it harder to, I'm going to guess it's got to be harder to elucidate good quality from that when the basic, what it comes from, is not a great quality?
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider when you consider film or video. You're not going to be able to get out of it what it doesn't have. What it will give you is what you can get, and sometimes they don't give much, and sometimes they give you a lot. It just depends on how the light strikes things, how close it is to the camera. When you got low quality and you blow it up, you blow up the low quality, and you end up with a magnified low quality. And everything turns to a blob. It's how close you were to the camera so that you don't have to magnify as much. It's also how much you can see in the movement of the subject, and what I'm talking about is biomechanics. Mm-hmm. Is there anything about the movement of this subject that suggests that it's something more? And that's where it comes in, to creating oscillating loops and oscillating files that allow you to see it over and over again in both forward and reverse motion.
Yeah, we saw that in the altercation video that you just put up recently between the white Bigfoot and the dark Bigfoot. You had done that where you had juggled it back and forth so we could continually watch that pattern and each time note something different about it, which that's what I found. As I watched it more, I would go past just looking at what they're doing to looking at their arms or their legs or, looking at parts of their body instead. So you gave me the opportunity to continually keep seeing it over and over until I got everything out of it I could.
Exactly.
I like that.
You get to break it down. You get to break it down many times. That was good.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about. While it lacked a lot in resolution for that particular video, you can see as the two individuals moved from the of accelerations and individuals doing pushing. You see a kind of an oscillation. Person when somebody gets 45 degrees into it and pushes, he has to pump his leg. Mm-hmm. And when you start, you speed up, and then when you change legs to the other leg, you slow down, and then when you push again, you speed up, and you see that in the video that there was a tremendous effort to push this white one backward. Mm-hmm. And
are we losing him there?
Can you hear me?
Sharon, can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. I'm not sure where I broke up at.
You were talking about the force it would take to push the white Bigfoot back.
Yeah. The amount of force, when something leans 45 degrees, it's serious about moving something, and as it pumps that leg, the strength of the leg causes a brief acceleration, and then it switches legs and it causes another brief acceleration, and you see that in the video, kind of a little spurts of speed, and then you'll see it slow down and speed with the pumping of the legs, and to me, that even though the resolution is not what I would like to see, that is a piece of information that goes a long ways toward validating the video. That you're looking at something that's really putting out a lot of effort at you.
Yeah, an interesting thing about that video too is as those two Bigfoot that were wrestling leave in a rush, this other very tall figure comes forward. It does give that implication that maybe just the sight of this other being frightened them or something, but it actually stands near the shed, and you get a proportion of it that makes it seem like it's almost twice the height of the ones that were wrestling. It was hard for my mind to fathom just how tall that figure was, but you've actually been to this site and to that shed before. Can you give us an idea what that shed's height's like?
Yeah, now it varies. You got to look at the shed. The shed is level, but it's on a slope. So down at one end of it, it's going to be a little different than the other end. But about midways of the shed, I was able to stretch a tape and get about 9 feet to the edge of the roof line. And you know, it's perspective is a funny thing, and it does enter into the assessment, you know, about, you know, what you're looking at as far as foreground and aft. But even you know, being generous about, you know, accounting for perspective, this individual is clearly, you know, far taller and larger.
Yeah.
You know, than the two that are scrapping.
It's like a whole different being. Yeah.
Right,
and
really
it's
just difficult to wrap yourself around. You know, sometimes I'm still astounded when I look at it. You know, it's something that is clearly out of the proportion for a normal human being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and despite the fact that it's not, the resolution's not as good as it could be, it's still a very, very informative clip. You know, a very, very informative piece of video.
Right. Well, you know how people talk about Patty, when the Patty film was taken, Patty, we discovered, was a female because she had breasts. Now, that's a detail not many people would think to put in. What amazed me about this figure was that it appeared as if it was favoring one leg. It would take a step with one leg, kind of drag the other leg behind, then take the step with that first leg again, drag the other leg. It seemed like it was a gimp in some way, like it just had been hurt somehow. And that's just a detail I wouldn't expect anybody to come up with.
You know, these guys were doing it on their own time, a lot of it on weekends, and with their own money. And you know, in my estimation, it was very smartly done. You know, when they realized that something was evoking a response or eliciting a response from the subjects, then they would kind of push the envelope in that direction to try to get something on camera. At first, they were unsuccessful. They got audio, but they didn't get very much video at all. They began to realize that, you know, how you put a camera up. You know, for instance, they used security cameras. Now, at the time, that these security camera setups were pretty expensive. They're a lot less so now. You know how technology goes these days. It gets cheaper and easier to buy. But at first, and they had it set up, and these cameras were hardwired, so they had to run wire out through the woods. And then they had a little shack with instrumentation, you know, the recorder and all that in it. And they were trying to get these individuals on video, and they, you know, they realized that it wasn't happening. So someone decides to use a mirror. Let's try a mirror, because you could hear them walking all around behind the camera, but they would never show themselves. And when they started to use a mirror, they started getting visual on the video.
Very good. Now, I noticed on some of those videos, too, it seems like they were using tires as a way to instigate them or something.
Yeah, tires, it's just a matter of observation, you know, that they realized that these old used tires were being, you know, thrown around and scattered and moved and played with. So what can we do to use this to see if we can get, you know, something on tape? They chained all the tires together. Let's make it hard on them. And it brought, you know, more response than I think anybody anticipated, because evidently they were in some way, only they know, and they just bound and determined, you know, to release these tires from their prison.
Mm-hmm.
And they threw these things all over the place. They ended up destroying a couple of trees. One of them, which was what we call here in the south a bodock or boyark. It's a very tough piece of wood, very tough tree, very hard to cut it with a chainsaw. And these guys tore that tree down and pulled his tires off there.
Yeah. That was some amazing video. What I think really got me, I mean, besides seeing the tree when it was all said and done, was just listening to the vocals. There was language. There was a lot of sort of chantish, grunting sounds. And there was even, at one point, I believe, it sounded like they were mocking the dogs when the dogs barked. It was quite a variety of audio.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. You know, I found pretty good.
Is that him coming out, or is that us?
I don't know. It's getting kind of digitized.
Okay, we're still. It must be in because we're still able to talk and hear okay. And people in the chat room are very nice to let us know they can't hear him.
Okay.
All right. So he must. MK, if you can hear us, how about hanging up and I'm going to tell you what. I'm just going to cut him off, and so he'll call back. Maybe we'll get a better connection. Okay, I just cut him off. Well, you know, he's talking about the stabilization and how he takes this old video, and even though it is old and in pretty bad shape, and 20, I don't know how many years old, say 10, 15 years old, and make it look decent. What really amazed me was a film that every one of us have seen, and it's the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, I saw his rendition of that. That was the most clear, stable, and shot of the assassination I think that has ever been captured.
Yes,
unbelievable imagery.
I have to agree. I mean, because we've all seen it, so we know what the raw footage looks like, and the way he has cleaned it up is amazing. And I posted it maybe 4 or 5 nights ago on Facebook, and I had to tell him, I cautioned him that it's very graphic. And my God, it was. And
it really was. What a crazy moment in time captured there. That was just, I've never seen imagery like that before. I think what he's been doing with astrophotography has really helped him to pull out details of things that can be really distant.
This was great. Well, we have you back on the line, MK.
Yay.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Okay,
yeah.
This is a lot better.
All right, well, maybe we can hang in there this time.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, yeah, out on the balcony of a hotel now, or what?
Yeah, I'm in Alabama. I went to a cave today. It's spring break, and every spring break we travel. My wife and I travel with our nieces to some place of interest, and we're in Alabama. I went to Moundville, Alabama, to look at some Indian mounds that were kind of unique. And then today we're went on down into the bowels of the earth with DeSoto Caverns. So,
your nieces are so lucky. I love that. A learning vacation.
Well, it's interesting stuff, and they get to do plenty that's fun too. And tomorrow it's theme park.
Oh, great. Well, while you were off, we were talking about the Zapruder film, the Kennedy assassination film that you stabilized and cleaned up, and how everybody knows what the original looked like. Everybody's not really probably seen the original Patty film. There's probably a few people left that haven't, but it seems like everybody's seen the Zapruder film. And what you did with that, cleaning that up and bringing out all the detail, and even catching the skull fragments.
Yeah, right. That was another case where the film could be helped an awful lot by stabilization.
Yes.
And go ahead.
No, I just said yes.
Yeah, and you got a moving car. All those planes in motion. The moving images and the hand motion of the photographer and that sort of thing. And once you eliminate all the planes in motion but one, well, then you begin to see things in the film that you may not have seen otherwise. And then when you get that little bit of knowledge, you begin to understand some of the circumstances there. You know, how they contributed to what you see on the film. You know, it kind of grows. That little boost in clarity and stabilization, it kind of contributes to, you know, if a person wants to go through the trouble of extrapolation, you know, it had a lot to give. The Zapruder film had a lot to give.
Yeah, it did. And that really is a thing that nobody really understands what you do if they just watch that. That's 110% of that's a great learning tool right there.
Yeah, you know, that was a terrible tragedy in the history of the United States, and it had an effect upon everybody downstream from that. You know, things are the way they are right now because of that event.
Yeah.
You know, so you know it's definitely worth, you know, reconsidering at any time, and especially in the light of, you know, that the House, you know, Assassinations Committee did determine that he died as a result of a conspiracy. So you know, if they came to that conclusion, it's certainly worth you know, re-examining the evidence and the way of the films that were taken to see if anything could be picked up that might point a finger one way or another. To me, it's very relevant, and it sort of occupies. It's sort of synonymous with unsolvability, you know, and that's too bad, because, you know, it's not, nothing is immune from being solved. And I think that this far down the road, people sort of just roll their eyes, you know, and wag their heads when you mention that you're looking at the Zapruder film, you know, like it doesn't even matter. And certainly it does.
Yes, it does.
Well, you know, and I think we can all say, too, like, the DNA advances have changed how we would have handled cases in the past. So if video is better now, we're better able to get these sorts of images like you've done, that we might be able to solve things that we couldn't have solved at the time with what we had. So, you know, hats off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is relevant. It is important. I mean, it is far enough down the road that, you know, you're not going to reverse anything, you know. But, you know, there's always something to be learned from history. You know, if you understand that history as it happened. What the great tragedies that I've seen, you know, in my lifetime and back through history is when history gets rewritten. You know, if it gets changed or rewritten, or either never written correctly, you know, that's the great tragedies. You know, because then it prevents people. They can't learn from it. You know, so it's
our job. It's our job, your job, my job, Sharon's job, everybody's job to get the facts and get history changed.
That's right. You don't want anyone. No one has the right to rewrite history. And many people have tried. A famous quote from William Churchill was that he said, "History will be kind to me because I intend to write it." You know, well, I mean, it gives you an idea of the mindset of the various leaders in these great, you know, wars and these altercations between nations. You know, that they want to put themselves in the very, very best light, even if it means the manipulation of the facts.
Well, look at how we've based an entire being from the past on some molars that were found, you know, Gigantopithecus. Sometimes we dig up, you know, a certain amount of bodies from the past and think we understand man's evolution. We only have a tiny sample. If we had all of the bodies that were buried, we could get the complete history. So I think that's what I like about what you're doing. You're giving us a lot of videos, so we have the most to work with.
That's right. In order to reconstruct anything, I mean, you need the most of the reliable evidence that you have. And it's amazing how much you can do with just a small amount of information if you can rely on that information. What you don't want to have is agenda-based conclusions. Where you already have decided before you ever consider evidence what your conclusion is, and you try to push that evidence in that direction. And that's done quite a bit in science. It should be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, there's an issue, I think, when people have a belief system intact, because they, a lot of times, whether they realize it or not, they'll twist the evidence to fit their belief, make it work, to support what they already believe. And really, if evidence is good, it should make your belief. It shouldn't be driven by it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you're dealing with something like that has scant evidence, like Bigfoot,
right.
it's hard to come by good evidence in Bigfoot research. And the people who have it work hard to get it. I think people they rush to find a scientist to validate it, and I think that a person that has good evidence, it should be carefully examined in an objective way. I don't know, a statement that this is the real deal is not really what you were looking to have. You want folks to look at it and they know they're looking at the real deal.
Right.
And without having to be told.
We have the same thing in the ghost hunting world. It's called a Class A audio, where everybody that hears the audio hears the same words, and then it's a winner. What I'm a little bit curious about here, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, is these people that were doing the research, that were doing these videos that you've been working with, what were their methods? What were they doing? What was that like? How did they procure it?
Well, they just tried a lot of different things, like the stuffed toy. The idea of inserting this little mini cam into it, digging out a cavity in that toy. They thought maybe perhaps that if it picked it up and looked at it, that the camera would get a facial.
Mm-hmm.
But as it didn't occur that way, and I'm not really sure exactly what happened there. But I think that maybe it slipped out the back, or maybe it was pulled out the back. I don't know. But
it was taken out and sat down, because it didn't look like it fell.
It ended up on its side. It's sitting on a wooden box. That's where they left it. This wooden box there for the whole time. It's been out there a very long time. So it ends up on the wooden box. I've got the whole video with laying on its side. It shot video for a long time, just sideways.
Mm-hmm.
But to catch that few seconds of audio, it certainly wasn't a washout. They didn't get the facial that they were looking for, but that audio was pretty good.
Absolutely. And now, I'm guessing this is, there was a habituation going on where, was there feeding going on?
Yes. And that goes with experimentation, and it really helps to have these things explained to you by the people involved, because, a lot of it, you don't really fully understand what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example, for the what I call the bottle tosser. It looked to me like it tossed a bottle, into the creek, and it gave a little audio there and a kind of a gruff kind of a grunt.
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman that was involved in taking the video told me, he said, "No, it's not a bottle. It's a loaf of bread." He threw a loaf of bread into the creek. So and I said, "Loaf of bread."
What's that about beggars and choosers?
Well, they had been placing candy, like Snickers bars, in these feeders.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And when the thing came and there was a loaf of bread in there instead of the sweets,
well, I don't blame you.
It threw the loaf of bread into the creek.
Yep.
You know, that goes back to a long-term, putting long-term pressure on a subject. And I'm not talking about in a negative way. I'm talking about you kind of sway them to behave a certain way. You elicit a response by doing certain things, and over a period of time, you get an understanding of what the reaction might be. So he fully understood what happened there, although I didn't. But when it was explained to me, I did. And that's the sort of thing now that has become invaluable. And my hat is off to these people for having any success, because it's so hard to get anything related to a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. They are slick. They're very, very sly. They're very intelligent in what they do, and they seem to have an understanding. And there's, like I said, I have 3 photographs that were taken by a film game camera that was of the film type. That they were the very earliest of getting anything on film in that area. And essentially, all 3 photos, and you can see cloud motion in the background between the photographs, so that I know that there was a certain length of time. They weren't just snapped, in a row. That they held what appears to be a dead chicken. A ball of feathers like a chicken, up to that lens, point blank into that lens, and made that camera trip. Mm-hmm. And they did it 3 times. And so it kind of tells you that they at least know that camera, in some respect, means something in the way of surveillance. But they wouldn't come in front of the camera themselves. They stayed out of the field of view and just shoved the chicken right dead into the camera lens.
Yeah. Now that adds something new to this whole scenario. This site, you've reviewed some, crazy video, but because they seem to understand cameras like an eye, and they do avoid it, and this group apparently used mirrors to try to capture them, which they could sometimes. But one thing they couldn't seem to understand is that these cameras can also do audio, and you've gotten some very unusual audio from these Bigfoot on this property. Jim, do you have some of those audios?
Yeah, I do. Since we're talking about the mirrors, this first one is to me is called the mirror cam growl. You want to set that up if you can, or is there much to set up, or just listen to it?
Well, if you can play it, over the air,
okay.
That'd be fine.
Yep. Okay.
That's actually when it's tearing the tree, the bodock tree. Up, trying to get this group of old tires are chained to that tree, and you can hear the snap of the tree, and you can hear the vocals, and it's just a pretty impressive piece of audio.
Okay, here we go. We might have to play it maybe once or twice because I'm not 100% sure about the volume. So here it is the first time.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I don't know that I'd want to be around at that particular moment. That sounds like a big guy.
We do have another audio that's got some language on it. That's been something that I've been really interested in, is the language, and looking for the origins of some of the words that they're utilizing. And when you can start to get used to certain ones' language, you almost know which one is speaking each time. But their interactions are really interesting. Hello?
I'm here. Are y'all going to play it? Is that what you're going to do?
Uh-huh. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So this is the first one again?
No, it would be
the other one.
Okay, okay, here we go. This one is 4 minutes and 23 seconds long. I'll just play her. Here we go.
Nashoba.
Okay.
There's something that I would like to explain, too. I think MK could probably explain it better, but the reason why all the noises in the video, or that audio, are so loud.
Yeah, well, I amplified them. Actually, the original audio, they're almost whispering.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they go down so low that you can't hear it at all. And then if you go and you amplify the audio, you begin to hear that there's quite a bit in the way of audio going on that perhaps, was just overwhelmed by everyday, ambient noise. So, it's very low-key type stuff.
It's not something somebody expected you to get on a video. In other words, they weren't planning on having a conversation for you to hear it. You had to pull that way out to get it.
Now, last night when I started advertising the show, after you, Sharon, after you sent me this audio, and I listened to it, I'd say, quite frankly, it was a little hard to go to sleep last night. Hearing this, I mean, you see the videos, you see the blurry videos all the time, but to me, this really brings it home.
Well, I ended up doing, because my line of work is transcription, and having to pick out even foreign doctors or anybody's with 99% or better accuracy, I thought, well, at least I can apply a skill I have here, and I transcribed what was actually said by this being. It comes out phonetically as na ba, and then later he says gayenda. Then he says Neshoba. Now, what's interesting about this is Neshoba means wolf in Choctaw, and what I believe is happening by the tone that he's saying this word, that he's actually using a member of the clan's name. That's kind of how I take it. Then he does a grunt, and then he goes ho ho aktrop ho a a, and then he says sapinga sa. And then there's some strange noises and cracking of limbs and things, and then he starts his chant. And I've been looking for some of the phonetics of this to find out if they correlate with any other native languages, and we can find out what the influences are.
Now, do you think that there are two here? Because there was the low voice.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a very, a high-pitched.
There's a subtle one. There's somebody he's speaking to. There's one he's speaking to, and that one isn't really speaking much, but the one that's closer to the microphone, you're better able to hear that one. But there did seem to be a low contemplative conversation going between them, but mostly held by the one.
Yeah.
They did some experiments regarding that too. They did some experiments and just to see if they could get them to repeat words back to them from out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
So they would say their own personal names, or they would say a particular word over and over again for a while, and then they would listen, and then they would do it again, and they would listen. And over a period of time, they began to hear their certain words, some of them with their names, come back. And the thing about it is, when I say that they have an affinity toward mimicry, not necessarily dead accurate mimicry. I mean, you can tell when they do a dog bark, you can tell when they do a hoot owl, you can tell when it's not exactly right, but they seem to like doing it.
I noticed that they seem to tag at the end of bird sounds. A crow will call 3 times, and then they'll call 3 times. And sometimes they seem to be mocking animals, too, which is interesting. But you can actually hear them sometimes trying to sound English or trying to sound native. They all put intonations in their voice to try to sound like that.
I've got a video that it's off in the distance there, and this video was shot from the eave of that tractor shed where the tractor guy video, where the tractor guy went to. Okay, on the other side of the building, looking out across toward the woods on the other side. And first of all, the first thing you see, and this is what amazed me, because in the Whitey video, the cow did not react much. But in this video, they did. 2 cows ran, like they were running for their lives, and they crisscrossing each other's path, and just really getting out of dodge. And then here comes a dog running like it's running for his life. And then you see this big guy on the horizon coming through the trees, and he's upright at first, and then he goes down on all fours. And he runs on all fours, then he gets back up, and then he goes back down again. Then he disappears, and then you hear him going into that tractor shed just on the other side of the wall from the camera. And just a big, deep, rumbly voice, that's just, it's concussive. It goes, body. And it says it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. And it's one of the names that were hollered out into the woods, in that experiment that they were doing. And it was no one around but the camera. But it was just, it was just practicing that name.
Wow.
Yeah, the mimicry, it does amaze me to hear that. They are very good at that. And the going down on all fours, that's something that was really unexpected for a lot of people, that an upright creature would find it efficacious to get on all four and hop around. But they do seem to do it, and it seems to work for them.
Yeah, it does, and it's kind of hard to look at because, it's the anatomy, that type, whatever anatomy they have that enables them to do that is I'm thinking pain.
But you are, but you're also thinking of having a restrictive hip like humans do. But my theory is that maybe they have a rotator hip like we have a rotator shoulder, where our arm can go all the way around, and that would make their gait different. It would make a lot about them different. It would make their hips wider. It's something to consider.
So
go ahead.
So not only their legs go back and forth like ours do, but they can also rotate out to the side. Is that what you think?
Just take your arm and do a full circle with your arm, and imagine your leg being able to do that. If it had a rotator cuff, it'd be able to do that. And it would actually be really efficacious if you were going to get on all four, because you'd have a momentum from going all full circle and hitting the ground to leap forward 20, 30, 40 feet. And you'd cover ground quicker and lower where you'd be less seen.
Okay, yeah.
Now, if one of us gets down on our hands and feet, our butt's up in the air because our legs are so darn long. But if you look at Patty film as an example, a Bigfoot body is extraordinarily long and the legs are shorter. So for them to go on all four, it doesn't at all create that butt in the air situation.
No.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think when I first saw this video where it did that. And this is not the white one either. It's a dark individual, and it's the size. It's so big that it's actually bigger than the cow, or at least it has the appearance of being bigger than the 2 cows. And I remember reading about an incident years ago up in British Columbia. It was recorded by John Green, and it's in several of his books. And y'all might have read about it. It's called the Ruby Creek Incident, where a Sasquatch came out of the woods and approached a cabin, and this woman named Miss Chapman with her children was there. She was there by herself with the children, and her husband was gone. She saw it coming, and at first they mistook it for a cow. And cows don't walk on their hind legs. It must certainly have been down on all fours to be mistaken for a cow.
Right.
And it stood up. And when she said it stood up, that's when she realized what it was. And she went back through the house with her children and went out the back door and went to I think they crossed the creek or got in a boat or something. They got away. And the thing went up into the house and messed with some salmon barrels and emptied them out, and later on was seen on an Indian reservation, causing problems. But I couldn't help but think of that when I saw that because, this individual got out on all fours and was quite good. And it's running straight at the camera. And I'm saying, well, maybe this is what it looked like to Miss Chapman, because it did both, all fours and then upright.
We have somebody in the chat room that asked something that I think would be kind of interesting to touch on, infrasound. Do we have any proof of infrasound? David Lowry wants to know.
Yeah, well, I kind of depend on Carl's, expertise along those lines.
We have somebody that's, let me just make a little disclaimer there. Carl Supp is, he's been doing the cleanup of audio for us to make really, really good sound where we can get rid of some of the background noise and just hear the voices.
Yeah, and Carl saw on one of the videos where, he's got a running graph of the sounds and where they lie in the audio spectrum, and he saw it dip down into the infrasound, and you go and Google infrasound, and it says it's in a certain range is infrasound. You can't hear it, but it's like light. Light you have wavelengths you can't see, and then you have wavelengths like you can have ultraviolet, you have near ultraviolet, you have far ultraviolet, you have near infrared, and you have far infrared. The actual spectrum is broader. He saw it dip down to the very near infrasound. It was infrasound, but not quite inaudible. You could jack it way up and hear it, but it continued, down in those ranges where a human voice does not function at that low frequency. It's
people had an unusual reaction to that too. I got a lot of people contacting me saying that they had headaches. My own reaction was an incredible sense of being watched. It was almost paranoid feeling. What it did to me was really odd. I wasn't expecting that at all. And we've talked a lot about...
A friend of mine had the same reaction. He didn't want to hear it the second time.
A lot of people said that was enough.
Yeah.
It's intriguing because, a lot of people kind of poo-poo the idea of infrasound, but there's actually a human being who can make infrasound, and the only reason this human being can do it is he has extraordinarily long vocal cords. And that's something that Carl Supp had come up with. He went around looking to see, is it possible? Alligators, crocodiles, okapi, they all can do infrasound. So size isn't an issue. It isn't just something that an elephant does. If the vocal cords are long enough, and if these guys are 7 to 12 feet tall, I think they got the vocal cords for it.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask, with the last audio we played of the Mashoba, it obviously sounded to me Native American-ish like. What's your theory about them, Bigfoot and their language? There are a bunch of different languages. Each tribe or clan has their own language. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I really, I don't really have anything solid on that. It's that one I was telling you about that said Buddy. Buddy is English. I would hate to withdraw the conclusion that he was English from that. They seem to be able to pick up things. I don't know if they fully understand it, or maybe they understand it in a rudimentary way. I really don't know. It's very fascinating, interesting stuff. And I want to gather as much data as I can, but not for myself, but for people who know a little more about that type of thing. So they could, listen to it, and maybe there may be, something that can be concluded from that.
I've actually found in some of that audio has had some origins in Ojibwa, which is a Chippewa from Canada that moved into sort of the Ohio Valley basically the mound builder area, and some of those sounds were coming clearly from that language. So there had to have been a good deal of commerce and trade between them, where they moved across lands and brought with them some words or some legends, or if they really are wonderful at mimicry and hiding in the forest and becoming one with the forest, then they're just parrots in a way of a lot of things. So their language is going to be really interesting to learn about, because it's going to say a lot about what they came in contact with.
Are you hearing a lot of the same voices over again?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I think some of them, yes, and I'm not sure about all of them though. I mean, they have a very incredible range. They have this one guy, and I call it the woo-woo file, where he gets angry because, and I found out why. They put an ice chest full of goodies, but they put it in a fenced-in area with a barbed wire.
Oh.
And it shook that barbed wire, and the barbed wire had tin rattling against it, and it did a slide in pitch like I have never heard. And if I didn't know that, I'm the one who digitized it. So I took it directly off analog VHS tape. So I know that it wasn't in a studio where you could slide the pitch sliders, but it just goes from one pitch down to a deep, deep pitch, steadily, without a break. Way, way down, and then kind of ends with a growl, and the first vocal that it gave was so concussive that my speakers actually jumped, on the computer desk. It caught me so off guard. I'm thinking I'm going to hear something off in the distance, and I have to crank up my vocals, my sound, and I'm ready. And because I read about it on the back of the tape, where the researcher says woo woo. He gave a little number. You can find it at this counter number.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ready for it. And when it got to that counter number, it almost blew my speakers off the desk.
Now, is that on one of your? Is that on one of your YouTube videos?
I think that it is on one of them as part of a kind of a 4 or 5. Different sound set.
Okay.
I need to go back and feature that sound, with a good analysis of it, because it's very concussive. I mean, it just to me, it touches a nerve.
That's one you're going to want Carl. You're going to want Carl to do that one, because he could probably find out even what range, what pitch it was varying from. It'd be interesting to see that. Yeah. Yeah,
I'd like to see. Carl can do a little video of a screen, send it to you, and you can see how that thing moves. The sound moves up and down. I've never heard nothing like that. If I heard something like that in the woods, I might just melt.
You find out how fast you really can run. Yeah. Hey, Jim, out of curiosity, do we have anybody online wanting to call in?
I put a message out there, but I was waiting to find a time to sneak this little shameless plug-in. If anybody would like to call in tonight and ask any questions, our call-in number is 1-347-826-9996. 1-347-826-9996. So if anybody wants to call in, please do if you have any questions or comments. There have been some comments in the chat room, you'll bring me a body and I'll believe you. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, there's the story going around where someone did shoot one and he has it on ice in Nevada somewhere. I'd rather see him on ice in Nevada somewhere. But there's got to be. It's up to people like MK and Steve, who we talked to earlier, and Carl and Sharon, that have this interest, to get the information this way. It's baby steps.
Well, we can enlighten you a little bit about them, but, to prove one, it's still going to take Belba and Sykes, hopefully, and I hope we can go that avenue. I don't want to see things come to a point where we have to have a body.
No.
And I guess I'm most concerned about the future of Bigfoot once Bigfoot is proven. What do we do? How do we treat it?
I think it's all related to what it is. If it's an animal, down through the years, voucher specimens have always been what they used. John James Audubon, when he made his trek through the American Southeast, he didn't paint the pictures of those birds observing them. He shot them and mounted them. Then he painted the pictures. And so, he was the first to describe a lot of species. But if it's a human being, that's not possible.
Yeah.
If it's a human being, we're talking about, that's a complicated subject because we're known as Homo sapiens, but we haven't always been. That name has changed down through the years as they try to describe modern man, and they find out more and more about what makes us tick internally in the DNA. They changed that name around. Right now we're Homo sapiens, but there've been before us. There was Cro-Magnon, there was Neanderthal. Those wonderful pictures that were drawn on the Chevet Cave in France, of those Ice Age animals, and they incorporated the wall itself and the imperfections in the wall into the painting to give it a three-dimensional effect. Those paintings were not done by a Homo sapien.
Mm-hmm.
Those paintings are too old for Homo sapien. They were painted by Cro-Magnon. See, and now they know more about the Cro-Magnon, and they know more about the Neanderthals too. That they were actually not inferior intelligence-wise to us. I mean, they were of a different sort, but they were still human, and they were adapted to the pressures that life bore down on them, and their DNA had changed their bodies to accommodate that. It's not evolution; it's adaptation. And when the time came where things changed so fast, or either reversed themselves to a former condition, they weren't able to continue on, and their bodies were too specialized, and so they ended up. They say they died out, but it's pretty clear from genetics now that they assimilated into the Homo sapien, and we have some of their genes in nearly all of us.
Oh, Neanderthal, Denisovan, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the human tag or the human name. It's kind of broad. Cro-Magnon was a human, but he was not Homo sapien in the sense that as we stand right now, well adapted to how we're living. But he was adapted in a different way to a different type of condition. And he wasn't Homo sapien, and neither was Neanderthal and Denisovan. But the Bigfoot himself, if he's got human in him, even though he may not be exactly like us, there's going to be some serious issues with taking a body.
Yeah. Absolutely. People ask me why I'm so passionate about this subject, and all I can think of is if I had lived my life like a Bigfoot, living by my traditions and my knowledge and my family ways and knowing to avoid, the humans, I would want a human out there or a group of humans out there to represent my best interest, because that's not my civilization, those aren't my people, but somebody needs to speak for what's going to be best for me to continue the life I've had. And that's where I want people to focus their energy. I want them to focus on being good representatives for Bigfoot.
Exactly. We do have a question. We have Mary McVicker. You have a question for us. Welcome to Welcome to Paranormal Geeks Radio. How are you tonight?
Hey guys, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Doing great. Yep.
All right, great. Yeah, well, this is a great show, and I'm learning a lot tonight. Very, very interesting stuff. My question is this. I was doing some research tonight while listening to the show, and I saw an expert saying, well, you know, if this was a true animal, you know, I guess there's a question about the breasts of the size of Bigfoot, and they were saying that, you know, if it were a true, like, ape-type species, they wouldn't have those. And my question is, or what I'm thinking is these two guys aren't going to design a costume and think, let's put bigger breasts on this costume. I mean...
Exactly.
Have you read about that at all, about the expert saying that this is fake because of that? I mean...
Yeah, I actually have heard that. I guess my reaction to that would be, well, if there is any accuracy to what Melba's study has shown, at least from what she's interpreted, that these are half human. So they are going to have some of our traits.
That's what I think, and I guess it might be a silly question. I just thought it was interesting that they would pinpoint, they would focus on that and say, has to be fake because the breasts are too big. So,
but see, there's another example of belief. You distort evidence to fit whatever belief you have. So if they really believe they're animals, they're going to look at it that way.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm learning a lot from you guys. This is a great show tonight.
Oh, I'm so glad you listened. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you,
guys.
guys.
You're officially a paranormal geek now.
Yeah.
Rock on, dude. Thank you, Jim. You guys have a good night.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so see, people, it doesn't hurt to call in. You know, she was laughing, and then there was no pain in her voice. Everything's cool. So if you want to call in, ask a question, or have any comments. That was a good question, though, because, you know, that she talks about reading an expert is saying this. An expert in what?
Well, and here's the thing. You know, every week I complain. I cover Finding Bigfoot mostly because I find it entertaining. But, you know, both Cliff and Matt call it an animal. And every time I'm incredibly insulted by the ignorance of that. They're chasing something that's smarter than them and is upright, and they're calling it an animal.
If it's an animal, they would have caught it by now.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with you there. And,
well, you know, as far as being an animal goes, you know, even the rarest of species, you know, the mountain gorillas, they can go and find them when they want to. They take tourists for money.
Yes. And
take them up there to let them see them, and they're 100% successful. You know, it's something different about them, or they wouldn't be as good at hiding as they are. You have to be you have to be pretty smart to hide that effectively. So it's that human element that you know we know we possess. We see it manifest. If you don't have a Bigfoot sighting, the lack of a sighting is in itself a statement. You know that you're because you can't find them, and you find their tracks, so you know they're there. But you know they walk the other way.
Yeah,
they go the other way. They don't. You know, they may mess with us or something, but they do so in a way that you can't see them or hide them, and it's just a mistake if you see one, or it's some extraordinary circumstance.
The one I saw had no clue. It just was doing its own thing. Didn't see me where I was. I was obscured more, but he was out in the open, so he just didn't know. And I think that says a lot. That when we go looking for them, we can't find them. When we don't expect to find them, we run across them, and there's something going on there.
Do you think it was that you hear about the Native Americans used to see them? Did you see it? You probably brought proof back from in your pictures on the petroglyphs. Do you think that they were hunted by the Native Americans and now they are just constantly in hiding?
That's not what I was told. I was told by the Hoopas and others that they used to trade with them. and they would actually meet and exchange goods, and that they spoke a language, but they were extremely unreliable. They call them rule breakers. They didn't follow the rules. They were dishonest. It's like they wouldn't fish, but they would run your nets and take your fish.
Yeah.
They wouldn't make a bow and arrow or a weapon, but they would take your weapon.
I think I knew them in high school.
That's the way they told me that they were. They said it wasn't. They were always around until the advent of the gun. When the Europeans came and brought guns, that's when they went to the high places. They didn't want any part of a gun, and they just packed up and left and went to the peaks, the extremely high ranges where they could stay away.
Right.
That's what I was told. How much of it is true, I don't know, but
makes sense.
That's the belief.
We had an interesting comment in our chat room. Somebody was discussing about what would happen when Bigfoot is proven, whether we would have to change what the category of being human is, and that's something I've debated about a lot myself. And I look at it this way: if you have a human being and he's raised in the woods and he's feral and he's never known civilization, does that make him not human anymore? Or if somebody has an IQ of 40, does that make them not human? If you have one drop of human DNA in you, does that make you human? So we're really going to have a lot of things to determine. Is it going to be scientific, by DNA, by a percentage of DNA? I mean, look how close we are to chimps. We're going to have a lot of things we have to face, and it'll be an interesting time.
But there was a whole family of people living in a cave in Scotland way back when. I'm not sure the exact date. But this entire family of people, several generations, had become cannibalistic, and they would kill people as they traveled on the roads at night and take them in there and eat them. And this had become established in the familial lines, where the children learned it from the parents, and they continued it until their hiding place was found, and then the people came in there and killed them all, exterminated them. But it was a hideous thing. But I thought to myself, when I read about it, that this is something that's not a normal human thing. But they had learned to do this. They sustained themselves by eating people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I guess it's possible for someone to learn and not know any other type of lifestyle, and just, if that's the only thing there is, just be that way. I don't know, but it's a very interesting, question and concept.
But it's going to be the next. Well, we have a DNA theory that's out there. I mean, I hate to. I don't want to say anything bad about it, because I know very little about DNA. I want to believe it's true, and it's gonna change everything and set everybody on its ear and shut a lot of people up and make a lot of people talk.
DNA is not necessarily, it is who we are, but it's also who we might become. Mm-hmm. With changing pressures, the DNA has the ability to adapt to the outside pressures that we're under, and as they change over long periods of time, the DNA will change the person to those conditions. Not to the extent that anybody changes form or anything, but an Ice Age person was of a different stature and a different look than a person who's living in the tropics in grasslands. who tend to be tall and lanky. It's they're all human, every one of them. But because DNA is not written in stone, it allows for change. And so that as the very first molars that they found from woolly mammoths contained only about 3 grinding ridges on the top of the tooth, and these woolly mammoths lived in a wooded type of environment where all their food they ate had woody stems, and those 3 large grinding ridges would tear that wood up and render it so that it could be digested. And later on, the newer fossils, they had about 15 or 20 smaller grinding ridges, and they were eating primarily grasses because the environment had changed. And they were no longer living in the wooded environment, but they were living in open grasslands. And what really happened with woolly mammoths is that it suddenly reverted back to the way it was, and things went back to a forested condition, and they couldn't chew their food, and you had a lot of woolly mammoths that were eating and gnawing and chewing away, but getting no nutrition.
Okay.
They couldn't render. I don't know if you've ever seen a cow that loses its teeth when it gets older, and it'll just be eating away out there in the pasture and falling off and getting thin and working hard, trying to eat enough, but it can't render the grass.
Yeah.
So it's DNA is like that. It must have enough time to accommodate the conditions that as they change, but it doesn't reverse itself very well, and it doesn't deal with really strong, fast climatic changes. It has to have time, and for a species to go out of existence or it's something like that, like what happened to the woolly mammoths. They find stuff in their mouth. They were eating, but they weren't able to grind it up properly to be digested, and they were already having to eat tons of food, in a week.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go straight through it, you don't do any good with it. It die out.
Good point. Very good point. I'm curious. Do you think, we've proven that modern-day humans have, some Neanderthal genes, might be where I got my immunity, might be where I got my red hair. The Denisovans we find in Pacific Islanders. It doesn't make us who have a little bit of these other versions of man in us any less human. So if we're talking about Bigfoot being, half human at least, and then half questionable, novel hominin, then, we can't dispute it's human. And then what we end up with is another race of humans. And here's the rub. Do we have bigotry and racism about them for being not living the way we are, or not valuing what we value, or not assimilating to our society? It's almost like we went, 500 years or so back in time, and we're dealing with meeting the people who live here and trying to decide how to treat them. And I'm really hoping that in that time period we learn something.
Well, Julie,
because of their nature, because they avoid us so effectively, and they when I say avoid us, I mean they may live on the outskirts of humanity and eat our scraps. But when I'm talking about avoiding, I mean they don't. We have no influence on them. That they don't have a desire to mix with us.
Mm-hmm.
And if given the choice, they'll walk away. They prefer to keep their distance, and by doing so, they have not had the external pressures to change in a long time. You know, and that's sort of the way I see it. That you're looking at very old DNA, and there may be other factors that we don't know about that enters into the picture too. You know, it's poorly understood.
Or like Jim and I have the theory about how that 15,000-year-old hominin showed up and started mating with humans right away, and our assumption is that perhaps those buried giants in the ancient mounds in the Ohio Valley area might have been the original people here. And what we might be looking at is that the mating occurred when, you know, Paleo Indians came across and entered into America and lived beside these people.
That would all be very interesting if you had enough to study, you know, that you could make a determination.
If the Smithsonian would spit out the bones.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You almost have somebody has to give something up that they have, or find some new stuff. 18,000 Native American skeletons are in the collection of the Smithsonian. Right. You know, there's no excuse for that. I mean, you don't need that many bones. There's no way you'll ever study them.
And they don't acknowledge them.
Well, they do now, but it's only because of diligent work by anthropologists like Oren Starn, who forced them to give up Ishi's brain. The last wild Indian, the Smithsonian had it against his wishes. You know, and Oren Starn found the paperwork, the correspondences between the Smithsonian and Alfred Kroeber, where he shipped it to them. He turned it over to Native Americans in the area that were the closest possible kin to him. They invoked the Repatriation Act, and they asked for it to be reburied with his remains, and they denied having it. And then when they produced the correspondences, the letters, then they packed it up and sent it to them. But it was in a vat with 35 other brains.
Oh, great.
Oh,
well, you know,
MK, we have, before we run out of time, I wanted to be sure that we get this question in. Somebody wanted to know about the skulls in the Lovelock Museum in Nevada.
Yeah, they had some really giant ones. I mean, really big ones. And they're no longer down there in that cabinet where they used to be.
And that's part of the legend of the red-haired giants?
Yeah, the ones that they showed on, like, Ancient Aliens, you know, where they showed that, those really were not the ones that people referred to. Those were more normal size, although they may be somewhat outsized. The ones that were referred to were many, many times bigger, too big, way too big. They were double a human size, you know. And they were seen by a lot of people, and now they're not there. There's not even the same amount there that was there when I saw them.
Interesting. So somehow they're losing evidence.
Right. You have a YouTube video about that, where you go up and you talk about that. You show the camera.
Right. I did, because when I saw the Ancient Aliens, I saw that there were some missing that I had seen. You know, so you know it's and of course I have testimony that these really, really huge ones, the ones that really belong to those mummies that came out of Lovelock Cave, were actually no longer down there. They were not in that cabinet. And I have an old picture that Don Monroe took that showed a really large jaw. I mean, with really unusual looking teeth. And so, you know, I feel like that, and you got to remember that museums are very much afraid of the Repatriation Act, because it forces them to give up, you know, these prized possessions and put them, you know, rebury them. And especially when you have something that's as odd and unusual as that, and you're really not sure if you're looking at a Native American at all. The fact that they had red hair and everything. So, you know, it's sometimes people will conceal them or hide them or move them around, you know, to keep that from occurring.
Right.
But,
and just so people know what that legend is, apparently the Paiute Indians said that there had been in ancient times a race of giants with red hair, and they were evil, and they would eat them. They were cannibals, they said. And they supposedly cornered the last of the clan of these giants in a cave, a Lovelock Cave in Nevada, and they supposedly asphyxiated them with smoke, right?
Burn them out. Yeah, the video I just put up there in chat is MK's interview with the gentleman. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it kind of explains that whole story and everything. It's really interesting. And there, when you're there, you show a good-sized jaw.
Yeah, it is. There is a good-sized jaw.
It's not a giant jaw, but it's larger than a regular mandible of a everyday man.
If you talk to some of those people who have seen the skeletons, and the skeletons themselves, I think it was a guy named Harrington and Loud, Llewellyn Loud, and I forgot the guy's first name, Harrington. They were under the auspices of the Smithsonian, were effectually looting Lovelock Cave, and 10,000 artifacts were taken out of there. But amongst them were a number of mummies that were of giant stature and had red hair, and they were told to rebury them. So they did. They reburied them. They reburied them out in the basin, and the local people came out there while Llewellyn Loud and Harrington were on a hiatus. The local people came out and dug their own mummy out, and they boiled it. They boiled it and made a broth, and drank the broth in some kind of initiation ceremony for some civic organization there in town. If you can imagine that, but that is in Emery Strong's Stone Age in the Great Basin, which he published in 1963, and he had that account in there where they did that. Right. So these different skeletons have been. They knew. The thing about it is, the point about that is that they recognized its specialness, and in some of these civic organizations have these strange ritualistic initiation ceremonies and stuff,
right.
And they kind of believe that they get some of that essence of that person by doing that.
You take on the spirit. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And so, one of them ends up being on display in the Mark Twain Museum. I'm fairly certain that was one of them. And in one of my videos, I interviewed this lady who saw it, and she said she over and over again how big this thing was. It was just gigantic.
I hate to pull the plug here, but we have about 40 seconds left of the show. This has went by so fast.
Yeah, it has.
So fast. But MK, I want to thank you so much for being on here tonight. This has been a great show, very informative. It's been a pleasure talking to you and listening to you.
Well, thank you for having me on.
We need to have you on again, no doubt.
We need a lot more like MK out in the field who are doing it because they have a specialized skill, not for any recognition, not for any profit, just simply because a mystery is afoot and he wants to know more. And I just appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for that, and to everybody that has followed my efforts down through the years. I thank you for your support. I don't always get it right, but I try to, and I try to provide as much information as I can so that people can. I think anthropology is an extremely important science and discipline, and it tells us about ourselves, and I think that's just extremely important.
It really, really is. Right now we're not on the air. We are just recording now. So this will be on the archive.
Okay.
So, but like I say, I would really like to have you back on again because we've just really we've touched a lot, but there's so much more to go over. And I've told Sharon, it really strains your brain at times. It
keeps you coming back.
Spreads themselves thin. You're trying to find something coherent a coherent story. You know, a common thread of commonality to the enigma of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot and ancient peoples and us today. You know, and I think that there is that thread of commonality there for somebody to find, you know, to figure out. But you got to be able to turn and follow, you know, the twists and turns that it takes you down. Exactly. You know, if you don't have that flexibility, you might as well not try.
Well, late last year brought us the DNA study and everything. What do you think 2013 is going to bring us in the Bigfoot world?
I don't know, but it's already been kind of you know, it's had some startling moments already, and you don't really know how it's going to end up because the cast of characters is such that you can't figure them out. But you know, if there is a Bigfoot body laying in Las Vegas, you know that would trump pretty much a lot of other stuff. But if there is not a Bigfoot body in Las Vegas, then you know then it has, you know, it's going to be the biggest anticlimactic event ever recorded in this business. You know, and it's going to, you know, do a lot of damage. The best
anybody that had anything to do with that will go down, no doubt. Either way, whether it's a hoax or it's real.
Well, who would have thought that Dyer would have any credibility where anybody would believe him now after what he did, you know, a couple of years ago?
Well, credibility is not an issue. It's whether he has it or not.
Right.
If he has the goods, you know, it's not going to matter who he was or what he did. But if he doesn't have the goods, then, you know, it's like I said, the damage is going to be significant. I saw just yesterday, a diorama constructed by man of ancient Indians in their camps and they did it with mannequins that I swear to you thought you were looking at a real human being. And I've got pictures, and I'll send some to you that you cannot tell the difference, you know. And I thought to myself when I saw that if they can make something like that, and it's standing up and it's looking at another one, and it looks like a still picture of living people.
Mm-hmm.
What could they do with a Bigfoot body if they wanted to make one and say this is frozen on ice? Mm-hmm. You know, and if they won't let you touch it, if they won't let you draw blood from it, then you really don't know.
You won't know. Exactly.
A little bit of smell of formaldehyde in the air, and it seems very convincing. Yeah.
Yes.
So what Rick Dyer will have to do is to submit the body, not just show it, but submit it to testing.
Right.
And then it will, at that point, nobody's going to remember what Rick Dyer did in 2008. But you know that he's got to come across. You know, or if this is another Penn and Teller, you know, it's going to do a lot of harm.
Seriously, yeah. And I mean, it's all got to come to a head anyways because this film has to come out. So.
Oh yeah.
Then we'll know if it's a Blair Witch Project or not.
You know, I'm really surprised that somebody from the movie industry hasn't tried to claim credit for some of these videos that I've been working with. You know, every time something good comes out, 2 or 3 of these guys say it was me. That's my suit. That's my mannequin. That's my painting. That's my stuff. But you know, that's my makeup job.
That happened with the Patterson-Gimlin film. Didn't the guy say that was me in the suit? I'm the one who supplied the suit.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know you've got good evidence, I guess. If you get 3 or 4 of those guys doing that, you because they live or die based from job to job. You know, they don't have benefits or anything like that.
Right.
And if they don't work, they don't get paid. They're technicians for the movie industry, and they make these mannequins or whatever. And it's a real if they can get people to believe in the Patterson film, it was their job, then they're going to get more work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's to their advantage to even lie. You know,
we see that in Bigfootery now too. Everybody's jumping on board saying, you know, they've got this or they did that or they got Bigfoot in a box or, you know, it's like notice me. They're like a bunch of ADD children, you know, that need a lot of attention. It makes the waters so murky, and that's what I don't like. They're stirring it up, and we can't see anything clearly because there's all this mud and debris.
Yes.
Well, you know, hopefully 2013. Just to answer your question, it will be less muddy. And by the end of the year, I hope
it'll
that's
settle.
the case.
Yeah, it has to settle. But MK, thanks so much for I just want to thank you for.
Back with each other.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because you're on vacation.
Yeah.
So.
I know. Go have some more fun. Go explore some more caves and go dig up a skeleton for us, please.
All right.
We need a giant. We need proof of a giant.
Okay. If I find one, I'll sure.
Just
be sure
don't
to,
call here's the key. Don't call the Smithsonian.
Don't call them.
Yeah, we laugh about it, but it's really quite a serious issue.
It really is. Yeah.
I would, you know, if I had evidence, I definitely would not inquire, you know, in that direction.
You might call Jim Vieira or Scott Wolter, you know, somebody that might be able to do something good with it, you know.
Yeah, somebody with a little bit of courage, you know.
Yeah, Jim Vieira does seem like he's got some cojones. I think he would.
I think he does too.
Yeah, it'd be in good hands.
All right, MK.
All right, well, it's been nice, and I thank you for having me on.
Thank you so
much.
much.
You have a good night. Have a good rest of your week.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye.